Hey guys, how's it going? I'm playing this game kind of as an onboarding for a Starcraft 2 player to begin with Warcraft 3. So the player that I'm telling the story to here is not new to RTS, but is new to Warcraft 3. And this is I'm not just using a straw man or a theoretical person. Someone in chat just said he came from Starcraft and would like to start with Warcraft. Which race would be most suitable? And I think it would be anything except Orc. I think Orc is the most different from Starcraft like RTS. Human could qualify, Night Elf and Undead, but it has to be a race that can do a tier 1 expansion, just like in Starcraft. So let's explain what we're doing here. I've chosen Human for this demonstration. Let's show what we're doing here. So, as you probably know, Warcraft 3 is an RTS where you make heroes. You can play hero-less, but it is not recommended. So, as a Starcraft player, you'll know how to do build order creation when you copy other people's replays. This is something all Starcraft players have to do. So I guess I don't need to go too deep into that. You could just copy this replay or this VOD and you'll learn enough from that. But suffice to say that Starcraft 2 has two resources, minerals and gas. And Warcraft has two resources, gold and lumber. But they don't have the same value. In Starcraft, mineral is the run-of-the-mill resource, and gas is the precious resource. It gatekeeps some of the most high-tech units, some of the most valuable units. So gas is very valuable. In Warcraft 3, it's the opposite. Lumber is a small timing limiter and a gatekeeper. You should see lumber kind of like the building time of a spire. Lumber matters for like 10 minutes. After that, it usually becomes irrelevant. You still need it, but it does not live at the forefront of your actions. Gold is the precious resource, and you can gain gold in 4 ways. Via creeping, killing neutral creeps, via mining from the mine, via expanding therefore to another gold mine, and also via selling items, either that you start with, like the town portal scroll, or items that you find along the way. And as you can see, 8 gold from a creep. By comparison, 1 gold mine gives 10 gold per second. So killing these 3 creeps, it's like gaining 3 seconds of mining time, if you will. So because gold is the most precious resource, you're always looking to get more of it, which means besides having the starting base, you can also go for a second base, and you can creep. So going for a second base is the most Starcraft-like way to expand your gold. But the way you should see creep routes, the routes being both the efficiency and the order of which camp you do when, creep routes are kind of like Starcraft build orders. Just like Gateway double proxy first can beat Nexus first in a blind build order rock, paper, scissors, so it is possible that a certain creep route can blind counter another. So once you start to become aware of how people like to creep, then you can come up with routes that have important trajectory points that intersect with the opponent, and that can be good for you. So the reason that this undead is here, because he is used to a human that fast expands. Fast expansion is the meta strategy for human in all matchups right now, especially against undead. That's why he's here, not because this little skirmish is good for him. He's doing this because he doesn't want me to expand. Now, I am playing off meta. I'm doing a fast tech instead of a fast expansion. And this is not really meta, but this is one example of how I have a build order counter against him bringing all of his army here to stop an expansion, because he could have spent that time better creeping his side of the map. Expansions in Warcraft and Starcraft work very differently as well. Like in Starcraft, usually when you expand, like with Protoss against Terran for instance, you'll keep 6 Stalkers in your main, 6 in your Expo, 2 Sentries, a Colossus, some batteries. You think defensively, and the Terran player will try to come with Widow Mines and drop them in your mineral line. So the non-expanding player is the aggressor. The funny thing about Warcraft 3, it's almost always the opposite, which is really weird, but it's probably partially due to the power of heroes. Hero is relatively very strong compared to units, and therefore when the armies are still small, I have 3 tier 1 units, he has 3 tier 1s. It is really common for someone not to be able to rush and kill you even if you were to go expand. So what do I do after I got an expansion up? I don't just stand here and turtle and defend. Why not? Well, I might be going to tier... the opponent might be going to tier 2, which will give them a second hero. I'm still on tier 1 because I fast expanded. That means that he is going to get really valuable heroes. He's going to get a higher level second hero. And I want to delay that. I've got a lot of stuff. Think of it like I have mass roaches, but you're teching to carriers. I have 2 bases with roaches, but you're teching to carriers. So what would the roach guy do? He would apply pressure. And that's how I would apply pressure in Warcraft 3 if I had an expansion. To delay the main hero creeping and the second hero creeping, to delay his tech unit value, and so on and so forth. So that's not the case here. I do not have an expansion. I am playing without Expo, but I am level 3. And in Starcraft 2, power spike timings are things like when you get 2-2 upgrades on Marines. That's like a power spike. In Warcraft, the power spikes are also centered around upgrades, but they're much more centered around hero levels. Heroes can gain a new hero ability at every level up, but they can only pick an ability for the second time on odd levels 3 and 5. So that is what we are waiting for. When we get Archmage level 3, he's dead. When we get Archmage level 3, it's over. When we get Archmage level 3, we immediately want to apply pressure to use Water Elemental level 2. Surrounding suddenly unlearned. No, I was trying not to micro too hard because they cannot copy it. Continuing the conversation, because you could notice that like explaining and playing was a little bit hard at the same time. The usual build order is you immediately start your altar, then your supply building, and then your barracks. So altar, then farm, then barracks, with 15-second delays between each, which is exactly how long a peasant takes to produce. So every next peasant builds something. Altar, then barracks, then farm. Right? Sometimes it's altar, then supply unit, then barracks. And the rule in Starcraft is that you need to have vision so that your worker line doesn't get attacked. But Warcraft works quite differently because we have town portal, we've got natural base defenses. So the main rule in Warcraft is to never stand still, which is actually not a rule in Starcraft. It's perfectly normal for a Protoss to stand still while he's macroing, having his units at home to defend, and then using observers to see if the opponent is coming. Like, sure, you'll move out of your base sometimes with Blink Stalkers to delay a medevac tank Raven push, kite them all the way back to your base and whatnot. But in Warcraft you can never sit still. That's because gold is not the only objective, right? There's also the creeps. So the creeps are like a neutral objective, just like Zelnaga Watchtower. And you constantly want to fight for them because it's actually a zero-sum game. Creeps do not respawn, so it's very important to get your fair share. In a normal game where both players know the meta and the best routes, you would in theory split the map in half. Right? If you're equal strength, you have defender's advantage, I would get all of these, you would get all of these, and we'd split the middle or fight over it. So with that in mind, of course, you need to be efficient, because if you're 30 seconds faster, then you're going to get the mid creeps. There's also cool things where you can do, this is the logical first creep to take, this green camp. The second camp is the second most logical, and then the third camp is this expansion. That would be the normal flow. So when you become aware that both players do that, you could try to take this camp first, for instance, then fall back and take your rest of the half. And, this was a strategy I employed in 2003 WCG. Take something on their side, then fall back, and I would get like one more creep camp than them, and that makes you stronger, more items, more XP, more gold, and so on. Finally, the biggest difference is the upkeep system. In Starcraft, anytime you have money and you have supply availability, you want to make a unit if that unit fits in your composition and is part of your dream composition. If I want 12 zealots and I have 12 and I have 6 and I've got room for more and I have warp gate cooldown available, well then I'm gonna make a zealot, and not doing it would be a mistake. It's a little different in Warcraft 3. In Warcraft 3, sometimes you could be at 50 supply, you've got the money, you've got a supply cap of 70, but you're not gonna go over because of the upkeep system. Why does the upkeep system exist? Initially it was designed to allow people with weaker computers to actually continue having their game run well. They allowed for 4v4 in Warcraft 3. That's a lot of units on the screen. So not only did they cap your supply at 90, then 100 with the expansion, but they also hoped that you wouldn't make use of that many. I've actually had this on authority from real Blizzard devs, ex-Blizzard devs, that they have the upkeep system because they wanted to make sure people don't use as many units. How does it actually manifest in terms of gameplay? It means that if I get to 50 supply,
I await your command. I await your command. I await your command.
If I get to 50 supply, I'm still at no upkeep. I'm getting 10 gold per return. Make one more peasant, and I'm getting 7 gold per return, a 30% upkeep tax. That means that if I'm at 51 by accident, or because of attrition, I would actually kill one of my own lumber peasants just so I can go back to full mining. Which is usually a heinous act that Twitch chat condemns. But my lord,
Your honor.
I was good to you.
King. Yes, my lord.
How this plays out in actual gameplay, because this is just theory anyone can look up, is that there is pressure to act. There's pressure to act if you're over 50. And there is luxury to dilly-dally when you're under 50. There's in fact incentive to distract. So if I have a small army of 50 population, I would want to go to his base, make him come home, town portal out, and then go do something cool on the map. Whereas the guy with 70 population wants to attack the enemy, have a man-to-man fight, and win. So this creates a cool rogue versus barbarian dynamic where the small surgical army acts roguishly and the big army has a financial pressure to act because they want to either win the game or they want to stop paying their army because their army is eating into the imperial coffers. So they prefer if the army dies in glorious combat, of course, to defend motherland rather than to continue to eat rations out of the upkeep. And it gets even more egregious when you get to high upkeep. This also creates an interesting dynamic with the expansion. If I take a fast expansion, or an expansion in general, that requires 5 gold peasants. Generally, you have between 6 to 11 workers on wood. 5 plus 5 is 10. Plus 10 is 20. 2 heroes, that's 30. That's 20 population left for an army. This is what 20 population looks like. These 5 knights, that's it. 2 heroes and 5 knights. Now I've got 20 gold per second instead of 10 gold per second. That's not a lot. And if the opponent has this, I would need more. So the moment I start going over 50 population, I'm getting 7777. Right? That's 14 gold per second. 14 gold per second compared to a 1 base 50 pop guy. That's 10 gold per second. That's a 40% increase. So even though I have an expansion, there's a population investment to man it, which then creates a very tight border for me to stay under 50 or to have to go over 50. And suddenly, I'll only have 40% more income than him, which is still a nice advantage, but it's nothing crazy. That means he only needs to kill 1.4 units per every one that he loses to continue to be able to trade with me ad infinitum. And that's while he had an initially higher investment speed to go to a higher tech. After all, the time that I was expanding, he went to tier 2. And when I finally went to tier 2, he went to tier 3. So now he needs to gain a 40% efficiency advantage with an army that's tier 3 against my tier 2. That's where Warcraft timings comes in. That's where Warcraft timings get really interesting. The race for the expander to get to a higher unit count, to get to a more qualitative unit count, all the while dealing with the drawbacks of upkeep, are really interesting. And meanwhile, all hope is not lost if one guy has an expansion but you do not. Hope is not lost. After all, you could do surgical 50 pop strikes, you could force the opponent to go over 50 pop in order to defend their bases. The 1 base guy has 2 points to attack. The 2 base guy has only 1 point to attack. So the 2 base guy needs towers here and here. That's a duplicate investment that may not both pay off. Maybe I just concentrate my entire striking force on 1 base instead of both. So there's all these redundancy investments for defense. There's the extra peasants, which actually creates a really good balance and a comeback mechanic for the 1 base guy. This is why expansions are not quintessential in Warcraft 3. Not just this, but also in Starcraft, minerals are the only way to get minerals. You have to mine minerals. But in Warcraft, I could also kill creeps and sell their items. Who's more likely to be able to kill creeps? The guy with 2 heroes or the guy with 1 hero and a lot of tier 1 trash units? Well, you know, it depends. But usually it's the 2 hero guy. So there's a natural comeback mechanic in not expanding and in dealing with someone that did expand. And I think that's interesting. It gives Warcraft its unique flair. The final thing is the engine. The engine is a lot dumber than Starcraft 2, even if it's smarter than Starcraft 1.
I swear it.
You see they get blocked a little bit, they kind of go around it and resume formation. And they're smarter than Goliaths and Dragoons in Starcraft 1, but they're dumber than Zerglings on creep in Starcraft 2. So what's interesting about Warcraft 3 is that it kind of follows a hex pattern. There is a north to east, well, a north to south, west to east invisible grid of unit collision. All these units are on the same horizontal grid. Right? These are all on the same horizontal grid. Then there are lines above it and below it. And this is the shape of fat units. Peasants are thin units. This is the shape of fat units. And it depends on what zoom in you play, how it's going to look. But this is pretty much the shape. And if you want to surround a unit that's going to be in between, you can do so by surrounding it north, east, south, west. Right? And now this knight cannot escape. Try to do the same thing diagonally, and it may not work quite as well. It's harder to surround with a northeast, southeast, southwest, and so on. Because the grid doesn't work that way. You can see I can't even really get in between that. I'm trying to get them as near as possible, right? But it's not equal. So always think in northeast, southwest, not the diagonals. That's how surrounds work. So this also leads to a lot of understanding when it comes to how you can body block people. If my Archmage is walking from the west to the east, basically what happens is, when I walk from the west to the east, the Pathfinder does a shift-click command like this in order to get there. So, for instance, if my Archmage is here, my Archmage is right here, and if I were to right-click here, the way that the Warcraft engine computes that invisibly, it doesn't say go there, because that's not how the programming works. It says go here, then here, then here. So we see now the pathing. Okay, now we're going to do it again, but I'm not going to hold its hand, and you can see if it kind of looks the same. So I think it did it a little tighter. It said go here, the tightest around the corner, then go here, tightest around the corner. So what's interesting is the moment that I click here, it does these invisible waypoints that we can't see, but it remembers how it initially happened. So if I start blocking it after the command has been issued, it needs to reroute. After all, if the rifle's here now, it already knows. I'm gonna go around it. No problem. Doesn't get blocked, right? It's only when you introduce a unit in the path after the movement started, that's where suddenly he has to recalculate. He's like, oh, did you see that little block? And then he gave it a new command. And did you see how it went all the way around it like this, unnecessarily? It went from here, all the way here, then here. When you think this would be a more direct route. That's because the engine does like a quick recalibration. And it remembered initially this was free and now it's not. The way that this becomes really interesting is if you have a moving intelligent unit that's actively trying to block a hero. So for instance, if I tell the Archmage to go here and I'm trying to block it,
I'll take care of it. Aye, time to go. Okay, I'll take care of it. Aye, time to
the Archmage suddenly looks a lot dumber. Like it takes a long time to get around it. Whereas Starcraft Zerglings will pretty much just slip past the Zealot no matter what you do. Zergling is of course also faster, but this is true even with slower units against faster units. Like Knight is quite fast, and the rifle can start blocking the Knight. Of course, Knight is really fast, so it's kind of hard difficulty mode. But you can keep these kind of things up really long, especially with units of equal movement speed. Look at the amount of movement speed reduction. We're basically taking him from his usual 100% movement speed, and we can drop it to like 30% movement speed, 20%. Sometimes you can create a complete standstill with traffic jam by constantly going up and down. And that's because I could tell this rifle to walk east. The moment it meets a unit newly introduced on its path, it doesn't say diagonally go past, because it can't go diagonally past. Look. It does up and then right. So what it does is it tries to go up and then right, or bot and then right. So what you do, you don't try to diagonally cut it off. You cut it off vertically. So if you can anticipate the direction in which it tries to dodge, you go up. It's like, oh, you're going down, I'm going up, I'm going down, oh, I'm going up, down, right? Oh, you want to go up? So it's kind of like Huey in Family Guy. What? Like, what? You can't get past. And that's because it's constantly recalculating up and down, up and down, up and down. And while this is essentially a dumb engine, because it takes too long to recalculate, this creates a really cool micro expression in being able to block units that is, sadly for me, not found in StarCraft 2 anymore. Essentially, the artifact of the past, the engine of the past, does things unintentionally in a really cool way, because now there's real worth, weight, and meaning behind all the movement. You gotta coax and finesse your units a bit to get them to do what you want. And this can be frustrating, but it can be super cool too. And in fact, the reason that people think Warcraft 3 is so cool to watch, those that are fine connoisseurs and appreciators, is because anyone can do a build order. Anyone can creep fast from A to B. Creeping fast from A to B is like a speedrun in a single player game, right? A build order is like tracing the lines. A kid does it. Right? And you need some mechanical prowess. But the thing that really becomes the artiste part of Warcraft 3 is micro skill expression. And that's only possible because of surrounds and because of body blocks.
Yes, my liege. Aye, my lord. Right. Of course. On my way.
Surround. Yeah. So that's I think the most cool thing about Warcraft 3. You can copy replays and go watch how to expand and so on, but what it really comes down to is fights. I hope you enjoyed this little demo. If you have any other questions, you can go to my Discord, discord.gg/Grubby. We've got a community of Warcraft 3 players there that are all kind of pro gamers. They know the game quite well.